Hey, welcome to the We're Better Together podcast. I'm Ian Stevenson.
And I'm Daniel Arduña. We come from different backgrounds, but we're working together. So our goal is to help you navigate being better together in the various sectors of your life by bringing you a once-a-month interview and some stimulating thoughts on the weeks in between.
We hope this podcast keeps you tracking on building something better together, whether it's your marriage, your family, your workplace. We want to serve you. So here's today's episode.
How we doing, everyone? Our listeners, our people out there. We are excited today in this 10-minute tune-up to look at this idea of celebrating. Today, we want to discuss celebrating those wins, taking those opportunities as we work better together with teams, whatever aspect that we are working together with others in. How can we take opportunities to celebrate those small and big wins that happen? You know, sometimes when we're working together, it can be easy to focus on the challenges. It can get easy to get caught up in what's not going well. But we want to talk today about the importance of making sure that we celebrate the things that are going well. Ian, I know that in both of the places that we work, as well as in our lives and in our marriages, I'm sure that there are a lot of things that come up when we think about this idea of celebrating. So for you, as we explore this idea today, what kind of thoughts start to come to mind for you?
Well, first of all, I think about our listeners who are hopefully working hard, fighting for unity in some context, and that as we have this conversation, it'll stimulate them to think about how they can this week take an action that helps celebrate something that's going on in their area. Because, you know, it's so easy to focus on what's not working. Like, you think about it, if you're in a marriage, you're on a team, you're in a family, the tendency is always like, oh man, this could be so much better. I wish it was this way. I wish we were doing that, instead of celebrating what is working. And, you know, there's even been a lot of studies done on the difference that gratitude makes in our lives, in our demeanor and everything. Celebrating is just an extension of gratitude, right? It's saying this is what's working. We're going to celebrate it regardless of what else is going on, right? And I know for me, like in my family, that even in the midst of whatever might be going on, when you even pause and really celebrate even a birthday or an anniversary, regardless of the stresses, regardless of stuff that's going on, when you pour yourself into celebrating well and celebrating authentically, it makes such a difference than if you just forget it. If you just bypass it. All you men out there who've forgotten your wives' birthdays, forgotten anniversaries, you know exactly what I'm talking about right now. So don't miss the celebrations. And that's what we want to get into today, right?
Absolutely.
So what do celebrations look like for you in your marriage, Daniel?
Yeah, when I think about that, I think about myself and even areas that I need to grow in. I think one place for me in my marriage that I can get caught in is when my wife has things that are going on that are hard, whether that be at work, whether that be with relationships. It can be real easy for me to want to try to fix whatever it is that's going on. So my advice back to her being fixing and not necessarily just listening to what she needs in that moment. And so there's been times along the way in recent conversations where I know that's something that I'm trying to work on, is to not immediately try to give advice to fix something. And so even in a small conversation, when I realize that I don't do that, or I don't give that advice and I just pause and I listen to her, we've actually had moments where a few days later or a week later, like it comes up and we celebrate. Hey, even in that small moment, that conversation we had the other week, I didn't try to give the advice to say, here's how we're going to fix all of it. I just listened. And even in that moment, I can feel the difference inside of me saying, yes, like there's some growth that's happening. There's something that's happening with this thing that I'm trying to grow in. And it re-energizes me to continue to try to take steps forward in that way. And I think that that's one example in my marriage of what comes to mind when I think of that.
So what are you celebrating in that case?
I feel like I'm celebrating that our relationship is coming together, that I celebrate that in this moment, I'm meeting my wife where she needs to be met. And that has a lot of meaning to her and it has a lot of meaning to me. When I don't do that, what it can actually do is draw us apart. So I get to celebrate that there's actually a unity that's happening in these moments where I take the opportunity to care for her in the way that she needs to be cared for. I take the opportunity to listen and actually acknowledge that what she has said before, hey, in some of these moments, she can express, here's what I need. And by me being able to give that response, think about what that means to anyone, any of us. When we express to people the things that we need or that would be helpful for us and people respond to that means everything. That brings together, as you and I talk about working better together in unity, that creates unity. And so I think that's just one example in my marriage, Ian, of a place where I can see that and where we pause to celebrate that.
That's deep. Like that's a deep celebration right there. I was thinking like simple things. Like sometimes for me, I celebrate like a good meal that she made, or I celebrate how beautiful she is, or I celebrate, just even something she did that was so helpful. Like just celebrating, paying attention, celebrating. But you're talking about deep stuff. You're talking about celebrating even her wants and her needs that you might want to fix. Like that's taking it to another level, man. That's cool. But what about, like, I think about teams, like, we all know we've been part of sports teams, and so many times in sports teams, like there's this ongoing move to just want to keep getting better. And what I love, even watching sports on TV and stuff, is when they've learned how to celebrate even the wins, right? They celebrate it. You even hear them saying in a lot of interviews, we're going to celebrate this tonight, and then we're going to get ready for what's next.
Yeah.
And I think that mentality is so great. It's what helps. If you can't celebrate the win now, and you just start worrying all of a sudden about the next game or whatever, then, you're not going to have that momentum that is going to keep carrying you. And I think that's what some of this idea of celebrating is all about, don't you?
Absolutely. I think, Ian, as well, what you bring into this in what you said, sure, my example, even though we weren't prepared for it, maybe went a little bit deep. But what we're saying is we want you to celebrate the small and the big things, not just the big things, not just the small things, but how can you celebrate both of those things when we see them happen? So you're talking about a team that gets to celebrate a win as huge. Also, when we lose or when we are in the midst of challenges, can we still find at times things that we can celebrate that will help us to progress forward? Thinking about being an athlete, running a race, and maybe I didn't win and I got second, third, fourth, fifth place or whatever, but can I look back at all and say, hey, in this portion of that game or in this portion of that race, hey, my second lap today in track, it was better than it was before. And even though I didn't win, now I know that I need to go work on lap 1, 3, and 4, but I know that lap 2 was good. And I can acknowledge that can help give me again the encouragement to keep pressing forward in whatever's going on. Or I think about in the church that I work in, pre-COVID time, when we could get together more often, we tried to get together with our leadership team ever so often, and then pose the question, what are some of the stories that we celebrate about what's been happening in blank amount of time, the last month, the last 2 months, the last 3 months. And all of a sudden you can see the collective energy that brings as people are just sharing small and big stories about how they see things going in our community.
Yeah, it's so good. Even this weekend, we're hosting a Loving Our City celebration. And so what we're doing is we're celebrating what's going on in the city, like what's good. Now, there's plenty of stuff that still needs work. It's broken, but we got to stop and we got to celebrate what's working. So, it's just important to pause and celebrate wherever you are, whatever's going on, whatever challenges you're facing, there's always something to celebrate. And if you just get bogged down in what has to be fixed, you're going to mess. We're going to talk about some more celebrating stuff in our next podcast as well. We're going to get real specific on one thing you won't even imagine that you should celebrate, but we're going to talk about celebrating it next week. But for this week, we want to make sure you're thinking about, in your context, whether it's at work, whether it's your team, whether it's your marriage, your family, find the things to celebrate and figure out a creative way, a meaningful way to celebrate it this week. You got anything you want to add, Daniel?
Yeah, I just want to remind our listeners, again, celebrate the big and the small. Celebrate that you have breath in your lungs today, that you woke up out of bed. That can make a difference. Celebrate everything that you come across that you feel like maybe you can grab a hold of. Don't hesitate to just take a moment. It doesn't even need to be long sometimes, just even a slight pause to acknowledge something that has happened that is helping you grow is huge to continuing to move you forward. And when it comes to teams and working better together, same concept there. When you can take those moments just to celebrate some small interactions that you have as a team relationally, in whatever project you're chasing after, it can make a huge difference for what you're chasing after.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to make sure all of you are thinking about our next interview is going to be with a guy named Jeff Fisney, who he works with Love Our Cities. He's the CEO of Love Our Cities. They're working with 90 cities, helping them figure out how to work better together. And you want to talk about a guy that knows how to celebrate, man. If you've ever been to one of their Love Our City serve days, man, they know how to celebrate. You don't want to miss that interview. It's going to be the first Monday in April, but we're going to let you go. This is our 10-minute tune-up for today. We hope it spurs you on to work better together wherever you are. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in today. If there's anything you heard today that was helpful to you, that you think might be helpful to somebody else,
please like, subscribe, and share this podcast so we can help others be better together as well.